The silence in our suburban home in Oak Creek, Illinois, wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a marriage that had become a performance. My name is Elias Thorne, and for 10 years I thought I was building a kingdom with my wife, Sarah. I'm a structural engineer. I build things to last, things that can withstand pressure and storms. But I failed to see the cracks in my own foundation. That Friday evening, the air was crisp, smelling of coming rain and dried leaves. Sarah was standing before the vanity, her reflection shimmering in the mirror like a stranger I only half recognized. She was wearing a silk emerald dress that hugged every curve, a dress she'd bought for a girls' night out. She told me it was just a quick birthday mixer for a colleague at a lounge downtown. "I won't be long, Elias," she whispered, Anna leaning down to press a cold, hurried kiss to my cheek. "I'll be back by 11, promise. Don't wait up." But as the door clicked shut, a cold shiver that had nothing to do with the draft hit me. Something in her eyes wasn't just excited, it was gone. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. Welcome to Family Secrets and Revenge. 11 o'clock came and went. In a house as quiet as ours, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway sounded like a hammer against an anvil. I sat in my darkened study, the glow of my laptop the only light. I tried to work, to calculate load-bearing weights for a bridge in Chicago, but my mind kept drifting to the weight of Sarah's words. "I won't be long." The clock struck midnight, the deep chimes echoing through the empty rooms. I walked to the kitchen, the floorboards creaking under my feet. Everything in this house was top of the line. Marble countertops, custom cabinetry, the kind of things that are supposed to make a life feel complete. But standing there alone, I felt like I was in a museum of a life I no longer owned. By 1 a.m., the girls' night excuse started to fray at the edges. I called her, straight to voicemail. I texted, no read receipt. In the age of constant connectivity, silence is a choice. It's a weapon. I started thinking about our history, how we met at Northwestern, how she used to be my biggest advocate. Lately, she had become a ghost in our hallways, always tilting her phone screen away, always working late at the gallery. I wanted to trust her. I needed to. But the gut never lies. It only screams when we try to keep it quiet. I'm not a suspicious man by nature, but betrayal turns even the most upright person into a detective. Our iPad was sitting on the coffee table, linked to her iCloud. I hesitated. To open it was to cross a line I could never uncross. But the silence from her phone was a louder violation than any privacy breach I could commit. I swiped the screen. It wasn't locked. Sarah was always confident, too confident. I went to her messages. Most were mundane. Emails about art shipments, group chats with her socialite friends in Naperville. But then I saw it. A thread with a contact saved simply as gallery vendor. The messages weren't about art. They were about a mountain cabin in Galena, 3 hours away. "I'm leaving the house now. He thinks I'm going to a mixer. I can't wait to be in your arms away from this boring suburbia." One message read. The reply came instantly. "I've got the wine chilled. See you at midnight, my queen." The realization hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. She wasn't at a lounge downtown. She was 3 hours away, in the arms of a man she had been seeing for 6 months. My breath hitched, and I felt the room spinning. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. Have you ever had that gut feeling that something was wrong, only to have it confirmed in the worst way? I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I felt a strange, icy calm settle over me. The kind of calm a soldier feels before a raid. I grabbed my keys, threw on a dark jacket, and walked out into the Illinois night. The air was frigid now, a stark contrast to the boiling anger beneath my skin. The drive to Galena was a blur of highway lights and dark cornfields. Every mile I drove was a mile further away from the life I thought I had. I passed the outskirts of the city, the skyscrapers of Chicago fading into the rearview mirror like a dying dream. I thought about our wedding in Savannah, the heat of the sun, the vows we made under the moss-covered oaks, to have and to hold. I wondered when she stopped holding on to me. Was it a year ago? 2? Or was she ever really there? As I reached the winding roads of the hills, the GPS coordinates I'd pulled from her iPad led me deep into the woods. I turned off my headlights as I entered the secluded driveway, the car crawling forward in the moonlight. The cabin was a masterpiece of cedar and glass, perched on a ridge overlooking a dark valley. It was beautiful, the kind of place we used to talk about buying together one day. Sarah's SUV was parked right out front, crookedly, as if she had been in a rush to get inside. Next to it was a sleek, silver Porsche. I parked 100 yards down the road and walked through the woods, the damp leaves muffling my footsteps. My heart was a drum in my chest, but my hands were steady. I reached the deck and looked through the glass. There she was. She wasn't the tired, distant wife I saw at breakfast. She was radiant, laughing, holding a glass of vintage red wine. She was leaning into a man I recognized instantly, Julian Vane. Julian was a high-profile developer, a man I had worked with on the Riverfront project, and he was my colleague, a man who had sat at my dinner table and shook my hand. I watched them for 20 minutes. I watched the way she looked at him, with a hunger I hadn't seen in her eyes for me in years. I watched him whisper into her ear, and I watched her throw her head back in laughter. It was a movie, and I was the ghost watching from the outside. Most men would have kicked the door down. They would have caused a scene, shouted, and maybe ended up in the back of a squad car. But I am an engineer. I know that if you want to demolish a structure, you don't just hit it with a hammer. You remove the supports and let the weight of the building do the work for you. I took out my phone. I didn't take photos for a divorce lawyer, not yet. I recorded them. I captured their voices through the slightly cracked window on the deck. Does he suspect anything? Julian asked, his voice oily and arrogant. Elias, Sarah scoffed, taking a sip of wine. He's too busy with his blueprints and his structural integrity. He's predictable, Julian. He's boring. He thinks as long as the bills are paid and I'm home by morning, everything is fine. He'll believe the flat tire story like he always does. That sentence was the final nail. I didn't feel sadness anymore. I felt a cold, calculated sense of purpose. I backed away from the window, vanished into the trees, and drove back to Oak Creek in the pre-dawn light. The drive back was different. The anger had crystallized into a plan. I reached our home at 5 a.m. The house felt like a tomb. I didn't go to sleep. I went to my office and began moving files. You see, with Julian Vane's latest development project, a multi-million-dollar tower, relied entirely on my firm's structural certification. I knew where the bodies were buried in that project. Julian had cut corners on the subflooring and the steel grade to save money, and he'd pressured me to sign off on it as a favor. I had the emails. I had the original, unedited reports. And Sarah? Sarah's independent gallery was funded by a trust I controlled, a trust that had a very specific infidelity clause written in by my late grandfather. He was an old-school man who believed that if you betrayed the family, you didn't get the family's money. I spent the morning reviewing the legal language. It was ironclad. Sarah rolled into the driveway at 9 a.m. I watched from the kitchen window as she checked her hair in the rearview mirror. He wiped a smudge of lipstick from her chin and put on her exhausted face. She walked into the kitchen where I was calmly sipping coffee and reading the paper. "Oh, Elias, I'm so sorry," she started, her voice a perfect pitch of manufactured guilt. I had a nightmare of a night. My tire blew out on the interstate, and my phone died. I had to wait for a tow in a diner for 3 hours. I thought I was going to have to sleep in the car. I looked at her, really looked at her, and smiled. It was the first time I'd smiled in weeks. "That sounds harrowing, Sarah, truly. Why don't you go upstairs and take a long, hot shower? You have a big day ahead of you." Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. If you had the power to take everything away from someone who betrayed you, would you do it slowly or all at once? Now, tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story and share your thoughts in the comments. The shower ran for 40 minutes. I sat in the kitchen, listening to the water hit the tiles, and I didn't feel a single spark of the love I once had for her. I spent that time on my laptop, finalizing the transfer of digital evidence to an encrypted drive. Sarah came down eventually, wrapped in a plush white robe, looking refreshed and remarkably unbothered. "Are you going into the office today?" she asked, reaching for the kettle. "No," I said, not looking up. "I'm taking a personal day. I have some structural audits to review. There are some cracks in the riverfront project that I can't ignore anymore." She paused, her hand hovering over the tea bags. "Is it serious?" Julian seemed worried about the timeline yesterday. "It's as serious as it gets, Sarah. When the foundation is compromised, the only honest thing to do is tear it down before it hurts someone." She nodded, completely missing the subtext, and went back to her tea. I watched her, marveling at how a person could live a double life so effortlessly. While she sipped her Earl Grey, I was hitting send on an email to Marcus Vance, the most aggressive divorce attorney in the state of Illinois. 2 hours later, I was in a glass-walled office in Naperville. Marcus Vance didn't look like a lawyer. He looked like a shark in a three-piece suit. I played the recording from the Galena cabin for him. "This is good, Elias," Marcus whispered, his eyes gleaming. "But the infidelity clause in your grandfather's trust is the real weapon here. When it's not just about her losing the gallery, it's about the morality forfeiture. If she's found to be in a long-term extramarital relationship, her claim to the Oak Creek property and the investment portfolio drops to zero." "I don't just want the house, Marcus," I said, leaning forward. "I want Julian Vane. He pushed me to sign off on substandard steel for the riverfront tower. He's been using me to mask his embezzlement from his investors. I want to hand the Safety Commission everything." Marcus smiled. "Then we aren't just filing for divorce, we're filing for a demolition." By Tuesday, the gears were turning. I sent a detailed anonymous whistleblower report to the Chicago Zoning and Safety Commission. I attached the original stress test results for the Vane Tower, the ones Julian had told me to lose. By noon, my phone was vibrating off the desk. It was Julian. I let it ring. And ring. And ring. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. If someone you trusted asked you to compromise your integrity for them, then betrayed you, would you use that secret against them? When I finally answered on the 10th call, Julian was screaming, "Elias, what the hell is going on? The commission is at the site. They've issued a stop work order. They're saying the steel in the foundation is grade B instead of grade A. You signed off on that." "No, Julian," I said, my voice like ice. "I didn't sign the final report. You did. You forged my digital signature on the secondary filing. I have the logs to prove I was logged out of the server when that document was uploaded." The silence on the other end was absolute. Julian knew he was dead. While Julian was watching his empire crumble in the dirt of a construction site, I turned my attention to Sarah's sanctuary. The Thorne Gallery was her pride and joy, the place where she felt like a queen. I called the building manager of the North Bridge Street complex. "This is Elias Thorne. I'm the primary guarantor for the lease on Suite 404. I'm calling to withdraw my guarantee effective immediately." "Mr. Thorne, we have a contract," the manager stammered. "Check the fine print," I replied. "The guarantee is contingent on the solvency of the Thorne Trust. As of 9 o'clock this morning, the trust is under litigation and all outgoing funds are frozen. You'll want to contact Mrs. Thorne. She has 48 hours to provide a new guarantor or vacate the premises." I hung up. Sarah had an opening gala scheduled for Friday night. She had invited 300 of the wealthiest people in Illinois. It was going to be a night to remember, just not for the reasons she thought. That evening, Sarah came home in a panic. She didn't even pretend to be the tired wife anymore. She was frantic, her hair disheveled, her phone glued to her ear. "Elias, something is wrong at the gallery. The manager said the funds are frozen. He said you withdrew the guarantee. And Julian isn't answering his phone. His office is locked." I was sitting in the living room, reading a book on the history of Gothic architecture. "Sit down, Sarah," I said calmly. "I don't have time to sit. I have a gala in 3 days. Do you have any idea how much money is on the line?" "I have a very good idea of the numbers," I said, finally looking up. "I also have a very good idea of what happened in Galena last Friday." The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. The boring husband had finally spoken. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Do you think Sarah deserves to lose her career along with her marriage? Or should Elias have kept his revenge strictly personal? Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story and share your thoughts in the comments. The next few days were a blur of legal filings and public fallout. News broke that Julian was being investigated for racketeering and safety violations. Thus, his investors pulled out in a mass exodus. On Friday night, the night of the gala, the gallery doors were chained shut. A for lease sign sat in the window, where Sarah's name used to be. I met her one last time at the house. Marcus Vance was with me. "You can take your clothes and your personal items," I said, as the movers I hired began wrapping the furniture. "Everything else, the art, the house, the cars, stays. The trust has been dissolved based on the morality clause." "You're a monster," she whispered, her eyes red from crying. "You're destroying my life over a mistake." "A mistake is a typo in a blueprint, Sarah," I said, walking toward the door. "What you did was a structural failure. And as an engineer, I know you can't live in a house that's built to fall." I moved to a high-rise in Chicago a month later. I left Oak Creek behind, and along with the ghost of the man who thought he was happy. I heard later that Julian took a plea deal, 3 years in a federal facility for fraud. Sarah moved in with her mother in a small town in Indiana, working a job that didn't involve silk dresses or champagne. I sat on my new balcony, overlooking the Chicago River. The water was dark and deep, but the foundation beneath me was solid. I had learned the hard way that the people you love can be the biggest safety risk of all. Sarah said she wouldn't be long at the party. She was right. The party ended, the lights went out, and for the first time in 10 years, I was finally standing on my own 2 feet. Thank you so much for staying with me through this journey of shadows and truth on family secrets and revenge. On to this story is a powerful reminder that while you can build a life on lies, you can never make it stand. If this story moved you, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more cinematic tales of justice, and let us know your thoughts below. Did Elias handle this with the right amount of coldness, or do you believe in second chances? I read every single one of your comments, and I can't wait to hear your perspective. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your foundation strong.